Hello, I'm the Dark Master, and welcome back to the Kirby Right Back at Ya Retrospective. In today's installment, we shall be covering episode 81, A Trashy Tale, or as it's known in the Japanese original, Startling, the Woman Who Doesn't Clean Up. This episode was originally released in Japan on May 10th, 2003, as the 81st episode, while the English dub done by the infamous 4Kids company would be released on November 20th, 2004, also as the 81st episode. Interestingly, the Japanese name was a reference to a Japanese book titled Woman with Attention Deficit Disorder, which discussed the prevalence of ADHD in adult Japanese women when it had previously thought to only affect children. It was called by the title Women Who Don't Clean Up. There was a TV special of the same name released in the 1990s, and this led to the phrase not cleaning up syndrome becoming associated with ADHD and hoarding. Of course, they changed this because it doesn't really work in the English language, but enough of this pre-review stuff. Let's start discussing the episode proper, starting with the story. The episode opens in the throne room, and man, Dedede must be taking lessons from Asmongold because his place is a mess. Dedede is nonchalant about this as he's watching a movie. Escargoon, however, is pretty reasonably disgusted, saying it's a rat nest before taking that back and saying that it's an insult to rats. With the fuzzy molded pizza, Dedede tells him to be quiet as he's watching something. Having enough of this, Escargoon calls upon the royalties to clean up the room as we see the first change between versions. In the Japanese original, we hear a rearrangement of the Candy Mountain theme from the Dynablade sub-game of Kirby Superstar, which I've reviewed before if you'd like to learn more about that game, and it sounds pretty nice. Sadly, though, due to 4Kids' incompetence at getting the rights to use the music, despite that normally coming pre-packaged with the airing rights, lost it, and so had to replace it with something far more boring. Regardless of the background music, we see Wadley's cleaning, but the king gets annoyed with the reasoning that he gives being the next change between versions. In the Japanese original, he complains that they're so noisy that he can't focus on what he's watching. In the English dub, instead has him complaining about them throwing out food that he says is perfectly good but is likely expired. Both versions are good at conveying the king's petulant and childish nature. Resuming with the plot, the two bicker over the remote as we then cut to Wadley's finishing with the bags of garbage. Escargoon wonders what they're going to do with it, and Dedede suggests that they put it in the ocean, as they could just toss it there, but Escargoon says that Tuff would nag their ears off. The king thinks for a moment, then has an idea. He activates the enemy monster delivery system and then inverts it as we see him put the trash on it, sending it over to the company. Escargoon laughs at what he says is their trashiest thing they've done yet. The enemy sales guy calls them up and demands an explanation. The king says he's got nowhere else to put the trash. The enemy sales guy tries to reason with him, but the two say that they shouldn't treat their number one customer such and threaten not to buy another monster unless they do something with the trash and laugh hysterically as you see the enemy sales guy is saddened and covered in garbage and cut to the jazzy intro. After the jazzy intro, we cut to Tuff, who is seen fighting with Kirby playfully. His mother, with cookies and tea, enters into his room, and in shock she drops it, as she is appalled by how filthy the room is. And Tuff is greatly concerned. His mother demands that he cleans up the mess, and Tuff makes a run for it as Kirby gets a mouthful of food, much to ladylike and even Tuff's chagrin. Tuff goes outside as he and the others are playing kickball. Tuff admits he'll get in trouble when he returns home and kicks the ball to Kirby, who takes it to the face, sending it flying. Dr. Yabu is seen working in his lab when suddenly the ball goes through his window, getting ink all over it. Here we see another change between versions. In the Japanese original, he says that he took all night working on this, while the English dub has him saying that he was working for months and months. In this case, I think the English dub is slightly better due to the simply greater amount of effort being lost here. He demands to know who did this, and Tuff, looking through the window, apologizes alongside the Cappy kids, but they are shocked as they see the absolute mess behind the doctor. Iroh points this out, and Tuff rightfully says it's more than even his room. In response, the angry rambles of the Doctor are where we see the next change between versions. In the Japanese original, he claims this messiness is due to research into a disease, while the English dub just has him flustered saying that he'll get his hands on them. The Japanese original is a lot more funny, so I actually prefer it here. They kick the ball, and once again it goes into the window of another building, specifically the back area of the grocery store owned by Tuggle. They point out all the rotten food laying everywhere, akin to the Mexia supermarket. In the English dub, he explains that the food is past the sales by date and he's eating it to get rid of it somehow. In the Japanese original, the scene is slightly longer as he gets on his knees and begs them not to tell anyone. It's a shame the English dub removed this, as it shows more of Tuggle's character. We then cut to another case of Tuff kicking a ball into Melman the Mailman's home, who is the biggest slob of them yet. Melman yells at the whippersnappers looking through the windows. He, however, is stopped by the call of Buttercup as he rushes to the front to help her, as he asks what she wants, and she asks for him to help deliver a letter, and he gets straight on it. She then thanks him and leaves. Tuff and Cappy kids comment on how she is very nice. Honey points out that she always made nice cookies, as Iroh says that he wishes his mom was this neat, while Mailman the Mailman says that Bookhams is lucky to have such a wonderful wife. We cut back to outside as Tuff and the others continue to play. Iroh says the adults are very messy for grown-ups, with Tuff saying that it's ironic his parents always complain about his room being dirty as he goes to kick the ball, but accidentally kicks the poor Kirby. The poor pink puffball is sent flying and lands in Bookham's house. Iroh calls for him, and Honey apologizes to Bookems, but when he doesn't answer, they decide to go and get Kirby, trying to open the door. Tiff wanders forwards and asks them why they're trying to break into the police station. She demands to know what they're doing, and Tuff, alongside the others, hesitate for explaining what they did. Tiff sighs and decides they'll tell Bookems later, but first they have to get Kirby out. Using a table, Tuff enters into the home and calls for Kirby. Tiff wonders what's taking him so long, but then hears him yell as he freaks out. The Cappy kids and Tiff show up to see what the issue is, and after Tiff asks, they get their answer, as we see the Bookhams household is the worst mess of them all, filled to the brim with loads of clitter and junk. Tuff asks what all this stuff is, to which Tiff is uncertain and says that Bookhams are pack rats. This confuses the others before she explains that pack rats hoard objects. Tuff is in disbelief and reminds them of the events of episode 59, The Mule Moocher, which I've reviewed before if you'd like to learn more. We see the Bookhams who cooked a really beautiful meal for the king due to the events of that episode that I won't go into any detail further here. Tiff correctly points out, however, that for all the garden's beauty, they never did see the inside of the house. There is a change between versions here, as there were text banners on the walls, but since that relates more to the aforementioned episode I've reviewed before, let's not waste any more time here and just say that the Japanese version is better and this was an unnecessary example of censorship. Tiff explains that This likely was due to not having time to clean up, which Iroh and Honey agree. Tiff then reminds her brother of what they're here for, and the two call for Kirby. They eventually find him lodged in some junk and pull him free, but he sneezes due to the dust. They hear someone arriving and hide. We see Buttercup show up here as we hear the next change between versions. In the Japanese original, Buttercup is silent while she walks in the house, while in the English dub, she hums. This is one of the few unquestionable improvements that 4Kids implemented here, so it makes her seem a lot more lively. She passes the group hidden, who, resuming with the plot, peek out and look at her, cooking. They're very grossed out by the state of the kitchen, which Kirby doesn't seem to mind. Police Chief Bookhams arrives with a sack, and after cleaning junk off the table, the two proceed to start eating dinner. This causes Kirby to run up and eat the food, which confuses the Bookhams and his wife, and the kids are exposed. They explain why they ended up in the house. Buttercup says that, clearly embarrassed, that they must have been shocked by all the trash, and Tuff tries to spare her feelings. Bookhams plays along with this, saying his wife is a pack rat, and she is greatly and rightfully offended at this, and calls him out for the cruel comment, and cries that she has tried her best to keep the house clean. But via a flashback, it is revealed that Bookhams has been bringing back stuff that is left behind in the station's lost and found for many, many weeks, if not months, slowly filling up their home with abandoned items. We also see the next change between versions. In the Japanese original, this flashback has no visual alteration. The English dub added these fuzzy borders to it. This is another rare instance of the few times that the English dub is actually unquestionably and unfathomably better than the Japanese original, as it makes the flashback more evident. Buttercup cries that her house was once the most lively in Cappy Town, but then there was always just more stuff, more stuff. The kids empathize with her, as Tuff says it's really Bookham's fault. He himself then gets angry and says that it's really the townsfolk fault for always losing stuff in the lost and found. However, this blame game is interrupted by the arrival of Dedede in his golden royal limousine driving up. He and Escargoon run to the police station. Chief Bookhams welcomes them, and the king explains he lost something. Here we see the next change between versions. In the Japanese original, the king says it was a pair of sunglasses, while in the English dub he claims it was a king-sized pair of swimming trunks. Both versions are fine enough, as a specific object doesn't really matter in terms of the plot. Bookham says he'll get it for them, so they can just wait here. The king, however, says that he can find it faster himself. Bookhams advises him not to do so due to it being a bad idea. This only gets Escargoon and Dedede more interested, as they think he's hiding something, and the king asks him if he does have a secret. Bookhams denies this, and the king pushes him to the side as he tries to open the door, but it's blocked by Tiff, Tuff, the Cappy kids, and Kirby, trying to save Miss Bookham's reputation. But Dedede hammers the door open and is shocked at seeing the mess. The king laughs, leaving on his limousine, as Escargoon says it'll be a perfect news story for their new TV series. Tiff follows after them as they drive away and asks what they'll do, as Tuff says he'll blabber to the whole town, as Kirby looks confused. We then cut to the next broadcast of the channel Dedede, where Dedede has a new show called Cappy Town Undercover, where they shall be covering the super stinky secret that the Bookhams housed in their home. The king shows a crew of oddities inside that document the state of the home. He is quite cruel, causing Buttercup to cry. There's Cappy's first is Melman the Melman, who can't believe it as we see his reaction. We then see Mabel, who is in disbelief that this is the person she knows. Sama the bartender is then where we see a reaction where he says that she keeps a horrible home. Kawasaki says that he thought he was a slob. With his customers, we see the next change between versions. In the Japanese original, Gengu and Gus mentioned that it's because Kirby eats all the leftovers that he avoids having a similar fate. This dialogue in the English dub is changed to Gus saying that While he's the world's crummiest chef, he's no slob, with Gengu saying his food is clean, just that it tastes like garbage. Both versions are fine enough, though I do admit liking the English dub a bit more, due to it giving the two characters a bit more, well, character. Resuming with the plot, Kawasaki thanks them for the backhanded compliment. We then cut to the townsfolk looking at the Bookems estate. It is here that we see the next change between versions. In the Japanese original, there is a rearrangement of the invincibility candy theme is heard during the scene. Four kids, due to their incompetence that I explained before, had to replace the music for a vastly inferior track. A Cappy couple takes a picture, which seems like an odd thought to memorize, but regardless, the mayor's wife asks how they could live like this, with the mayor saying it must have been hard with all the trash. His wife looks at the trash, which rumbles in movement. A rat emerges, scaring her. It scurries away. A ferret then shows up and chases after it, dislodging trash and covering the group in refuse. As we then see the ferret and rat flee. Waddle Dees then, with a large rake, help the mayor, and others escape. The mayor is injured as his wife is concerned about his pain. We see Professor Curio helping carry Biblio, the bookstore owner, out. The Curio says that he should be fined, while Biblio adds on how Bookhams being a public figure makes it even worse. Somehow. And we see more trash fall down. Dedede and Escargoon mock the couple, Escargoon asking how they could reach such a state, laughing at the two, who stand there depressed. We see Dr. Yabui, Melman the mailman, and Tuggle the grocery store owner. Reactions. All are very shocked, making fun of them, calling them slobs, and who should be ashamed of themselves / get a maid. Tuff calls them out as they were also slobs. Tiff then explains the situation of how the chief Bookhams was really only hoarding was due to how much was put in the lost and found by the townsfolk. The townsfolk understand, with the mayor saying that it explains everything, while Tuggle asks why they didn't just throw it out. The king dismisses this nuance as we hear the next change between versions. In the Japanese original, Dedede calls Buttercup a nasty woman, to which Escargoon agrees and describes her as being less than human, which is something that sort of sounds like Elliot Rodger or something. The English dub has Dedede call them slobs, as Escargoon continues saying that Buttercup is an insult to slobs. Honestly, this is a great change, as the mention of humans kind of breaks the world building of this TV series. The two laugh. We see Buttercup cry as her husband tries to help her cope. The king then says that we shall go to the next slob's house. This freaks out the townsfolk, who then flee to try and clean up their homes before they can be recorded. Dedede and Escargoon go to enter the limousine to drive off to their next stop, but are stopped by a crowd of Cappies gathered. The king tries to tell them to move past, and is very confused as to why they're all there. As he looks at the castle, where they are shocked as, upon getting a better look at it, see it overwhelmed by trash. They are, of course, horrified by this. We then cut to inside as we get a look at the monster of the week, which let us talk about now. This is Trash Basher. In terms of design, he's fairly simple and easy to understand, being effectively an anthropomorphic garbage can with shoes and gloves. It sort of reminded me of the Junker boss from Mario and Luigi Bowser's Inside Story. Honestly, kind of a forgettable design, but I like the demonic eyes. It gives it more charm than it would have otherwise. In terms of voice acting, in the Japanese original, he's voiced by the noted Japanese voice actor Nobuo Tobita, who also voiced Kawasaki and Camille Bidan from Mobile Suit Gundam. He does a good job here, and there's an interesting little factoid, as Trash Basher continuously says the phrase Gomen Nasai, which is a pun based on Gomi, which is a Japanese word for trash, and Gomen Nasai, which means I am sorry or excuse me. Very clever, but clearly it doesn't really work in English, and the English dub has him just make these very hilarious noises that sort of seeming to carry the tone of barfing. It's an uncredited person, but honestly, I love it. Regardless of whoever is voicing it, it's overall a decent, if a bit of a bland, monster. We see Lola Lo, La La, the Waddle Dees, Cerebrum, and Ladylike flee from the castle and his filth. Trash Basher spews trash as Dedede tries to drive to his castle, but ends up crashing into Trash. Meta Knight looks alongside Sword Knight and Blade Knight down upon Trash Basher and says, "This stinks." The king enters into his throne room and hastily calls up the enemy sales guy and demands an explanation for this. The enemy sales guy then explains that since the king sent them trash, he thought that why not send him some of their own trash, which, honestly seems pretty reasonable. I think even though a lot of people dislike corporations, if someone just randomly started dumping trash at a small business, they probably wouldn't care if they moved it back to the original person's house. The king points out that he never sent them a monster, but the enemy sales guy continues to explain that they tried to get rid of the garbage, but no one in the entire galaxy wanted it. No idea why they didn't just drop it into, say, a black hole, or a star, or an abandoned planet, but regardless, they decided to send it back. Askargoon complains that this reasoning not really making sense as to why send a monster, to which the enemy sales guy, not to worry, as it's free of charge. Dedede tries to get him to see reason, but he gets hanged up on as Tuff shows up. She calls out the king for being irresponsible, as Tuff says it's all his fault. Even Kirby is somehow annoyed. Escargoon whispers to the king that they gotta do something, and the king says back that he has no idea, as Tuff says he better think of something quick before asking how much exactly he did spend them. The king twirls in place and says it was a lot, as Tuff morbidly notes this is bad. We cut to Cappy Town where the townsfolk flee from Trash Basher, who spews garbage everywhere. The camera pans as we see the whole town covered in trash. Dedede says he's been hornswoggled, as Escargoon points out the enemy has sent out more trash than the king sent them. Tuff says it's a mess, while Tuff says they gotta clean it up. Dedede tells Kirby to go get the monster. Kirby hesitates, and the tyrant kicks him over there to Trash Basher. The monster leers over Kirby, spitting up a little trash, and Kirby for once hesitates to suck up an enemy, as it's too gross even for him, as he backs away. The king calls him a chicken, as Tuff and Tuff wonder why he's not fighting back, as he's beaten bigger monsters than this. Trash Basher blows Kirby away with garbage, crushing him against a wall to the shock of Tuff. She tells him to watch out, and in turn Trash Basher vomits liquid garbage upon him before Kirby manages to escape. Trash Basher chases after him. Tuff is confused as Tuff says even Kirby won't eat garbage. He is chased through the town, over a bridge, through the countryside. We cut back to the king and Escargoon, who says that if he won't clean that guy up, then they will be doomed, as the king says Kirby should do something. Tuff and Tuff call him out, since this is, well, his fault. Kirby is cornered in an alleyway, much to everyone's shock, as Trash Basher prepares to finish the job with trash. But Meta Knight shows up on a nearby roof and tosses a broom at Kirby, who eats it to become... Clean Kirby, last seen in the Harry Potter parody, episode 38, A Novel Approach, which I've reviewed before, so check that out if you'd like to learn more about the anime's depiction of cleaning, as well as its appearance in the game series. But to keep it brief, I think the appearance here was really great. I love the design they gave for the hat, as it lacked one prior to this. And indeed, this is its last appearance in the anime, and wouldn't return until Kirby Star Allies in 2018, 15 years later. Which, it's just kind of a shame. Tuff even subtly acknowledges this episode gap, saying it's been not seen in ages. Trash Basher belches trash at him. Kirby effortlessly bats it away into the sky. Trash Basher spits out more, and again Kirby bats it away. This continues for a bit until eventually he runs dry of trash. Tuff points out the obvious that it's out, as Meta Knight tells him it's now time for an attack. Kirby brushes dust into Trash Basher's eyes as it pathetically and feebly tries to spit out more trash. Kirby, however, has had enough, and as we see the last change between versions. In the Japanese original, he says the word clean, whereas English dub just removes this. And honestly, frankly, the less Kirby talks, the better. It just always feels odd when he talks, as I've always considered him to be somewhat of a baby, so good job, 4Kids. In both versions, Kirby then sweeps into him causing him to fly into the air and explodes. The crowd cheers. Mennonite tells him it's time to clean up, and Kirby, through the power of Rainbow, cleans up all over the town, including Bookhams' home, which he has to spend a little extra time just to how dirty it is. And everyone looks on in amazement. Buttercup is happy to have it all be clean and sparkly. She and her husband hug Kirby. Bookums calls him a hero, as Buttercup says that she'll make a large batch of cookies just for him, which greatly pleases the pink puffball. We cut to the throne room where the king is seen cleaning. He asks why the Waddle Dees can't clean this up, and Escargoon, in a rare case of bravery, says that they didn't make the mess and instead he did, and thus even he must clean his room, even despite being a king. Tuff laughs, but Tiff tells him not to, as he has to clean up his room as well, as Kirby hands him a broom. He says this is a dirty trick, as the episode ends with Kirby leaping up into the air, happy. Now that the story is done, let us discuss the positives, negatives, and my final thoughts. Starting with the positives, the episode's story and themes were pretty solid. Hoarding is an unfortunately common phenomenon whose origins we still don't 100% know why. I've had family members struggle with it, and it puts a lot of stress on those who live with hoarders, which the episode captures well with the Bookems and Buttercup family. Speaking of which, this episode is the only one in which she plays a major role, and I think she shines in this regard. Clean Kirby was great. I wish she came back again, but this was a good send-off. The press coverage that Dedede does to the Bookhams is a pretty sad yet realistic depiction of the low-bar exploitative reality TV shows that plague the mentally ill. Trash Basher was a fine, if middling monster that I think is kind of cool, even if it's not all that amazing. I also thought Tuff's role in the episode was pretty good too. It is here, however, that we get into some of the negatives people like myself and others have. Let's start with one that I personally disagree with. That being how several have said that Kirby refusing to eat garbage in this episode contradicts the events of episode 72, Dedede's Raw Deal, which I've reviewed before if you'd like to learn more. And I really don't think this is a contradiction. For one, Kirby was especially gluttonous in that episode, and for two, the sushi may have been bad, but it wasn't as rotten as, say, the trash here is. It's more like, oh, it's just a little spoiled. Here, though, it's pretty vile. And I wouldn't really consider this much to be a retcon or an inconsistency with the setting. My biggest issue would not be that or most of the changes between versions, because honestly, this is one of the rare times where a lot of the changes that the English dub did were actual improvements in the overwhelming majority of cases. But it was removal of the music tracks and a slightly too long scene of Tuff kicking the ball in windows. It got a little bit of repetitive. Overall, it's a solid, if kinda unremarkable episode. It's not a must-watch or a must-skip, but good enough that I think you'll enjoy it, or at the very least not feel like you wasted your time watching it. Normally, I would end the video here, but I got a little announcement. As you've probably no doubt noticed if you're a longtime subscriber of mine, that a number of my older Kirby Right Back At Ya retrospective videos have been flagged for various reasons and by various troll groups. As such, from now on until we run out of them, I shall be re-uploading them each Sunday on the weekend alongside my new Kirby Right Back At Ya retrospective reviews. Until I run out, of course. Frankly, I want this video series to be complete before I conclude the series, so congrats, now you get to double the Kirby Right Back At Ya at once. And I would encourage that you share them out, as re-uploads don't tend to do all that well, but regardless, anyway, I'm the Dark Master, and if you liked this video, you liked it, but if you loved it, consider subscribing and sharing this video around. Take care and have a wonderful day.